I think that Star Wars is going to be just fine. And I'm pleased to be able to report to you that what we've seen taking shape is indeed taking shape. And I have some additional details for you today on what Disney plans to do with Star Wars. I think they're going to fix it. I actually think they're going to fix it. It's exciting. All right, so of course, Disney has one insanely successful vertical, the MCU. It's ridiculously successful. In fact, everyone's holding their breath, I think, to see if it can continue to be as successful. Especially, it's interesting, we're going to have to keep an eye on that as well, but Kevin Feige is changing things up a little bit on that formula for, his next 10 years. And I'm curious to see as he wades into waters that have been troublesome for other franchises, if he can pull it off. As he gets more, tries to diversify and stuff like Star Wars did, I hope he learned the lessons that Star Wars unfortunately learned. I think all franchises should diversify, but I think they need to do it organically. And I think the MCU will pull it off, to be honest with you. And I think Star Wars, again, is going to be just fine. All right, so anyway, Disney's like, why not apply the formula that we have at the MCU that Kevin Feige has developed and all the people who work on the MCU and apply it to our other valuable vertical, and that, of course, is Star Wars. And I'm hearing that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to model Star Wars on the MCU. That's the thesis statement of this video, and it turns out what Disney's thesis statement is for Star Wars going forward. They're going to set their new stories in the same period as The Mandalorian, that sweet spot right between the original trilogy and Disney's trilogy, because things there still look like Star Wars. You still have remnants of the Empire, you still have remnants of the Rebels. Dave Filoni can transition his fan-favorite animated characters into live action. We're already seeing those headlines because they're still alive during this period. And yes, Star Wars is still, doing all those books and comics that are going to explore the time way before all the movies, even the prequels. And, one of those could lead to a movie or a TV show down the line, because Marvel churns out an incredible amount of content each year, and it's about to double that content once their Disney Plus series get up and running. So there's space for some kind of storytelling in Star Wars to go way back in time, but the majority of it is going to focus, I'm hearing, on this time between the two trilogies. So, because Disney, what they want for Star Wars is they want a crossover connected universe like Marvel has in film and Disney Plus, and at the very least, the behind-the-scenes talent. I haven't heard anything about on-camera Marvel talent, and I'm hoping I don't. We'll talk about Chris Evans, though. All right, so anyway, let's discuss. So yes, Kathleen Kennedy is on her way out. As I've been telling you, Disney realizes that she's caused some problems for them. It's like the woman who ran, I wish it weren't all women, unfortunately, but the woman who ran the theme park development. She had to leave because Galaxy's Edge got off to such a bad start. Thankfully, Rise of the Resistance, the attraction, which is the most rooted in traditional Star Wars, interestingly enough, has done quite well. It's a little glitchy, but it's very popular. But anyway, Kathleen Kennedy, she's going to be phased out. Disney has been eager to get rid of her for a while now, but they've decided to wait until her trilogy finishes, which it just has, and her contract is, her renewal is now coming up as well. Because nobody else wanted to finish the trilogy. Remember I told you that Disney offered J.J. Abrams the gig. They said, do you want to finish this and be in charge? And he said no. He's insanely loyal to Kathleen Kennedy, and also I think he just doesn't want to get involved in that. But also now he's at Warner Brothers. So she's not only has Disney lost the person they were thinking of replacing her with, but he ended up being very valuable to Kathleen Kennedy. And so now she's lost what was effectively her ace up her sleeve. He directed 2 of her movies, and both were very, very successful financially. But again, he's over at Warner Brothers, and he's going to start. They want him to mix in at DC. That's a whole different conversation, which we've had. And when there's more movement there, we'll continue to we'll pick up where we left off. But the reason J.J. Abrams is so loyal to Kathleen Kennedy is that she was the one who introduced him to Steven Spielberg, who became his mentor. She plucked him out of high school, literally, and set him on his way. Side note: don't worry about Kathleen Kennedy. She's going to be just fine. She produced multiple billion-dollar pictures during her time at Star Wars, and will likely get a sweet producing deal either at Disney, like you see it happened to Amy Pascal, and she thrived post heading up Sony. Kathleen Kennedy could either get I wish that these weren't all female producers, but I think Amy Pascal has really acquitted herself, and I'm very happy with the work that she's been doing with the Spider franchise. So anyway, Kathleen Kennedy could either get a deal at Disney or maybe even Universal, where her former boss, Steven Spielberg, has a first-look deal with his production company, Amblin, and Universal, by the way, actually owns a minority stake in Amblin as of 2017. She could also go back to Amblin as a producer, working with Spielberg again, or she could go back to the production company that she formed with her husband and fellow Steven Spielberg pal and business associate, producer Frank Marshall. So Kathleen Kennedy's going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. All right, so back to Star Wars. The TV part of this plan is already underway, with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni kicking things off with The Mandalorian quite successfully. You know, I guess it was a test case, and I think it's worked out very well. Favreau, of course, is the original Marvel director. He unfortunately got pulled off his own trilogy, which I think was unfortunate. But you know, he's become never give up. So he really rebounded at Disney with the technological work that he's been doing for them with The Jungle Book, The Lion King. So you know, Jon Favreau stayed with Disney. He's still friends with Feige. He's still in the Spider-Man movies over at Sony Marvel. So he's great. So that's some Marvel talent right there. And Taika Waititi was also brought in for season 1 of The Mandalorian, in front of and behind the camera. And of course, he's already set to direct a Star Wars movie. That deal is in place. We'll get back to that in a moment. And for upcoming season 2 of The Mandalorian, Filoni, as we know, is backdooring his animated characters into live-action Star Wars through that season, which will give way to a whole interconnected Star Wars universe on Disney+, where there are multiple shows and they're all connected with people guesting on other people's shows, just like you see in Marvel, with the option for those same characters to head over to the movies, to guest in the movies at the level of the Marvel characters who are going to Disney+. So they're not going to star in any movies, but they'll show up. They'll do a flyby, right? And for that to work, obviously the new movies would need to take place during the same time period, which again is between those two trilogies, the original and the Disney trilogy. I think it's a very clever idea. I would say again, check out the final 4 episodes of Clone Wars. Thank you so much to all of you who insisted I go and check that out. I think it really shows where we're headed here, because you can see how brilliantly Filoni can weave in classic Star Wars elements and lore, which are still relevant in this time period, right? Because we just finished, the original trilogy is still fresh, right? Which is still everyone's favorite. And so you can reference all that, but Filoni's still able to create new and fresh stories that still, I think it's really worked out quite well. So they just want to continue that in the movie and TV space, live action movie and TV space. I'm hearing Filoni will head up television and Favreau maybe jump to movies. Who's going to head up movies is a little bit sketchy. Taika Waititi is already again going to direct an upcoming Star Wars movie, and Feige is set to produce one. The Russo brothers have already volunteered to direct a Star Wars movie, and don't be surprised if Feige takes them up on that offer. I certainly would. I don't believe Feige has the bandwidth to run 2 cinematic universes. He could be an advisor. He is a Star Wars fan, so I'm sure he'd love to be involved. And again, he could farm out his impressive roster of behind-the-camera talent, which continues to grow. I personally would like Jon Favreau to be Star Wars Kevin Feige. You see him very much in that role, even more prominent because he's a creative in the Disney Gallery Mandalorian show. He's really taken charge there. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy's literally relegated to sitting next to him and hardly gets to speak at all. I think, quite frankly, they should have been a little bit more respectful of her because she still technically is the head. I know some of you don't like her, but I think, you have to be polite. And if she's going to be on the show, she should get more airtime. Although the fact that they're editing it that way and nobody did say maybe we should be more respectful, I think is quite telling. But because Favreau is a creative, I don't know if he wants to take himself offline from being able to direct movies. Kevin Feige is a producer. That's his career choice. It's what he does. He doesn't want to direct movies. Jon Favreau is, again, a creative. I don't know if he'd want to become a Feige. So that's the only potential wrinkle there. I'd also like to see George Lucas come back, more than just visiting sets, right? And being like, hey, everybody, like trotting him out. I think George Lucas is vital still. They never should have probably thrown out his outline. I think maybe that things would have gone better for them. But I think the most telling thing is that Dave Filoni is as successful as he is because he was trained by George Lucas. I think a Star Wars universe headed up by George Lucas, as an advisor, I wouldn't give him any real teeth, but I'd still want him to train new talent. I want him to teach people the way of Star Wars thinking. I think that's very important. And then I would have Filoni heading up TV, as is going to be the case, and then live action TV. And I would have Favreau or someone else, if Favreau doesn't want to do it, head up movies. But it would need to be someone who was a fan. Clearly, if you watch these Mandalorian behind-the-scenes episodes, Jon Favreau is a huge, massive Star Wars fan. I think that, for instance, the problem that DC has over at Warner Brothers is that nobody's running that division who's actually a fan of the content. So if they get somebody else to come in there, they need to really be a serious Star Wars fan. I do worry about only using Marvel talent behind the camera. Deborah Chow and Rick Famuyiwa did fantastic work on The Mandalorian Season 1, and I continue to think that it's really Favreau and Filoni that are the key, and let them continue to pick talent. I like the idea of doing an MCU structured cinematic universe. I think that's great, but I would like different talent to do that. I would make an exception for Taika Waititi. He's already in the mix. He's doing great. And the Russo brothers. Star Wars needs some image repair, and they would be able to do it. But then after that, I would stop. As for on-camera talent, actors, I wouldn't double dip on talent. Chris Evans is the only exception I would make here. He wants to do it. His MCU journey is complete, at least for a little while. Like, he's going to take, I think Robert Downey Jr. will be back much faster, because as artificial intelligence, as we've discussed. But Captain America is going to take, I think, at least a couple of years off. So let him go play in Star Wars. He wants to do it. He's beloved. And he could have a beard. He loves to be a brunette and have a beard. That's like Chris Evans' preferred, state of existence. And hey, Obi-Wan rocked an amazing beard, so I think he'd fit right in. I know that Brie Larson really wants to be in Star Wars, and I'm glad she's such a big fan. I think that's really important, as we try and repair it. I think it's important that people who work on Star Wars love Star Wars for what it is. It's fine if you want to add to Star Wars, but I think people who want to change Star Wars into something that would interest them are the problem. So I wouldn't do that. But Brie Larson loves Star Wars, and maybe years from now, she too could come over, maybe, since she's such a mega fan. And if she continues to be successful, her first movie was very successful. Let's see if she continues to be so. But she's just getting started in the MCU. I don't think you could do 2 franchises simultaneously. That's the rule that I would put in place. I'd also like to point out that the most popular character on The Mandalorian is a practical effect puppet and an alien character, a type of character largely, almost entirely missing from the Disney trilogy. And that's what's unique to Star Wars, something that Marvel does not have. And I think that's something that they should recognize and double down on going forward. I mean, Filoni and Favreau clearly understood it, which is why they created the baby. They just call him the baby. We all call him Baby Yoda, the child. But I think that that just shows that it's fine to copy Marvel, but don't forget what makes Star Wars unique. And that's a big unique factor. All right, so how does this plan sound to you? Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.